This week, we'll talk about World Relief, the country's largest Christian relief agency, which is celebrating their 30th anniversary, evidencing the love of Jesus by doing work in some of the most critical and toughest areas of the world. And we'll be talking with Patty MacDonald, great friend, great leader, and Northeast Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'm Charles Galda, President, Division New England, and your host for the Church in Action. Patty, thanks for being with us again.
It's so great to be with you too, Charles, and excited as we launch this new year and to see all what God will do and the partnership between us.
Amen. And there's a ton of things going on in your world that we want more people to know about. And so we'll talk about more of that as we go through. But can you give us a little bit of a bio about yourself before we get into World Relief?
Sure. I'm Patty MacDonald. I'm married. My husband, Mark and MacDonald, and I have been married for about 35 years. We have two grown children. I became a Christ follower when I was about 13 years old. God really wired me for, I believe strongly, for justice and also for vulnerability, because I had lost my father when I was 10 years old. I'm the youngest of six girls. We were raised in New York, and our lives really changed after losing my father. And a few years later, I came to know Christ, and my sisters came to know Christ, my mother. And I fast forward, I went through college and with a degree in communications, moved to Boston. I was very involved in television the first few years. This was in the mid 80s. And however, once again, although I was involved in television production, I felt very called to ministry and got very quickly engaged with Park Street Church in the center of Boston, and learned about lots of different ministries. Young Life, I was involved very much with Young Life, the board of the Inner City Young Life, working with kids on the South Shore, women's leadership, young adults leadership through Park Street Church. And as I continued my career, I left television, went into commercial real estate in the middle of the 80s. In Boston, very demanding, and yet my heart of hearts was really a calling to minister and serve the most vulnerable in the communities that God led me to. And after meeting my husband, Mark, a few years into this, once he was situated in his career, I left kind of the corporate sector and launched a career in Christian relief and development. I actually started in 1990 a job with World Relief, and had learned about World Relief in the pews of Park Street Church, and I felt the real calling upon my life to minister and serve with World Relief. And that was the beginning of a pretty substantial career in helping to serve and walk alongside the most vulnerable.
And so now you've set that up perfectly too. So now can you tell us about World Relief then?
Sure. And the fun thing is, for all you New Englanders, is, Boston strong. I mean, World Relief literally started at Park Street Church, and it was not unlike such a time as this, where the world was in chaos. And there were, it was towards the end of World War II, and Europe had, several thousands of displaced people. And there was a handful of churches in Europe that reached out to Park Street Church, had some kind of connection with the leadership, and said, look, there are people starving on our doorsteps. We need help. We as the church, need help to come alongside and care for these displaced people. And because of all the war and conflict. And so it was 1944. And so that's 80 years ago. And the leadership presented what was going on to the congregation. And the members in the pew came up with an idea: how about, as we begin the Lenten season, we sacrifice and save a dinner a week, a coffee, ways, we do extra little jobs and put money into jars. And they did this. They got a real movement going. They got other churches involved in the Boston area, and which culminated in a large Easter offering and kept on going. But that initial money was sent over to these European churches to distribute and help aid. And that became the War Relief Commission, which right after World War II started World Relief. And so World Relief, that was the impetus. And, World Relief is a Christian humanitarian relief and development agency that cares not only for displaced people, but people who live in extremely poor areas, people who suffer violence and oppression, and immigrants and refugees. And that work around the globe started about 80 years ago, but about 40 plus years ago, just through a handful of missionaries who had come over from Vietnam, had come back during the Vietnam crisis to New York. They, again, got some church leaders together and got connected to the government to help resettle refugees in the United States. So in the United States, World Relief has over 21 offices who help, with the help of the church, with the help of the local church, to resettle and care for those who are newly resettled through the government, and providing vital services.
So you guys really got your start in preventing what was a very legitimate fear. I remember Churchill writing about this in his books, that as the Nazis were being pushed back, they were destroying everything they could to make it harder on the Allies. And there was serious concerns about mass starvation across whole countries in Europe as that was happening.
Yeah.
And so that's neat that there's that you're stepping in that space, and there wasn't mass starvation. A lot of effort went into that, including on behalf of the churches.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
And so can you give us some examples of what are programs or countries you guys work in today?
Right. Well, so we have this combination of the sustainable development work that we do globally. So we're in about 12 to 14 countries deeply, where we are training and equipping local churches and leaders and volunteers to meet the needs of the extreme poor. And so that is, we identify a large area. Recently, I came back from Malawi, and we celebrated with Grace Chapel 20 years partnership in Malawi with Grace Chapel, and over $1 million. And they started initially, when they worked with World Relief in the AIDS crisis. They helped set up medical clinics and provided healthcare professionals. But as time went on, the model of World Relief is really to identify a very large geographic area, let's say 60 to 100,000 people. And then what we do is we create these, it's called the Church Empowerment Zone, and we train church leaders and volunteers, and we weave in technical expertise. So in areas of extreme poor, we start out with helping to provide saving and community groups. And then we might work with agriculture and diversifying seeds and to prepare for marketing. We work very closely with providing biblical curriculum to couples and families, and caring for your brother and sister. And so what we do when we're working in the area of sustainable development is that we're strengthening and also putting these leaders through biblical curriculum so that they know how to care for the most vulnerable in their communities. And then over a period of 7 to 10 years, it just is kind of like a reverse Ponzi scheme, right? It just keeps multiplying. And we've seen huge success with this model. And
So you're not training people like me or Westerners to go in and have those skills. You're training local native church leaders that is who you're talking about.
yes, oh yeah, we come, the mission of World Relief is to empower the church or empower the local church to serve the most vulnerable. So the first thing we do when we identify a very extremely poor area, country like Haiti, Cambodia, Sudan, Chad, Malawi, Burundi, Rwanda, Kenya, South Sudan. These countries, what we do is we identify, we get the churches together, we get them all on the same page. And that same page is we all believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And when he was here, he cared for the least of these. And so these churches might be of different denominations. They might believe in different things like women in leadership or, baptism, but they all agree that Jesus cared about the most vulnerable. And so we put them through 1 year's worth of what we call the transformational tree curriculum. It's a biblical curriculum. We get everybody on the same page. And then we continue with those leaders and volunteers, continuing to train and equip all throughout the area. So yes, it's definitely kind of coming alongside the local church. The staff that we work with is the national staff. It's the people from that country. We have country directors in each country, and they're from that. Most of them are from that country, unless it's a time of transition. And so it's definitely working with the nationals, with the national language, and caring and supporting the local church so the church can be the church. And the wonderful thing about this model is that we have seen the statistics come back that the growth of the church has increased about 40%. So like we know here in New England, when the church is the church, caring, like we saw it in COVID, when the church is on the front lines, training and equipping and serving and just meeting, with no discrimination, the needs of the community, that's where we see growth. Well, that's what we see with World Relief. So that's one big aspect of our work, is working with the extreme poor. Another major aspect is, working in times of crisis and the war-torn nations that also need help. And, we were very involved in Ukraine. And since then we've established an office in Ukraine where, again, we've seen a huge surge in the church. And we've been partnering and working with the local Ukrainian church to distribute not only physical aid and medical goods and water, but working with the trauma services and helping to fund programs, for women and children specifically who have been, traumatized in the crisis. And most recently, Israel and Gaza. We are not a political organization, but we're meeting humanitarian needs through helping with clean water and sanitation, as well as providing medical, working with partners on the ground that will help provide medical services and aid.
And so one of the things that I love about the model you guys talk about, and Malawi is a good example, is you're so intentional about avoiding the scenarios laid out in When Helping Hurts, right? That book is that, we'll go in with all the best of intentions and we'll bring in, tons of rice and give it away, trying to help people who are hungry. And we just knock the legs out of everybody who farms rice in the area. And so much of your efforts, what I hear when you talk about stuff, is we're really trying to build up the infrastructure, the leadership, what's happening on the ground there. We're not looking to supplant or do what might feel good to us, but in the long run may not be really helpful.
Yeah, if anything, we work ourselves out of a job. When you're working in the depths of these communities, they have no idea who World Relief is. They have no idea. We are really, that's sustainability. And yes, I spent I've worked now about 25 years in specifically Christian faith-based relief and development. I spent, my beginning with World Relief. I'm kind of the end of my career with World Relief. And in the middle, I worked with World Vision for several years. And, I knew Rich Stearns very well. And Rich wrote this book, A Hole in Our Gospel. And, he said that, trying to solve, the global poverty really is brain science. And it doesn't help if you're just creating dependency. So we're training and equipping. And then what we just saw in Malawi at the end of November, when we went over, we celebrated this incredible church empowerment zone that was graduating. It was thousands of people were there, but we had touched so many lives. And basically they said, go ahead, go on to the next community. You've been here for 12 to 15 years. And now we're equipped to go and identify the next geographic area that's going to need these kind of life-changing transformational skills.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us about some new initiatives maybe you guys have going on. I don't want to talk about anything that's not ready to be talked about publicly, of course, but what's some new things happening in 2024?
Yeah, so we are really, really excited about this because we're celebrating our 80th anniversary, and we're launching, similar to 80 years ago, this initiative throughout all the churches in the United States. We're encouraging people to come and join with us and really see how powerful, once again, the church can be in the midst of this crisis and the crisis of today in the world. And so we are launching the 80th anniversary with a Lenten devotional and initiative that goes through. The first piece is at least through Easter. And so what we're doing is looking for churches to come alongside with us, come alongside this movement where we have created a digital devotional that you can walk, you and your congregations, great support, great resource for your congregations to be involved in a Lenten devotional up until Easter, or you can order hard copies. And we have designed a whole program and all these resources for the church to kind of step in. And we have videos, we have just things you can do with your children's programs to get to basically all come together. We're looking for at least 80 churches to join us and be involved in this Lenten devotional kind of movement that will lead up to Easter. And then we'll take an Easter offering. And this will really begin our 80th anniversary. And with that money, just like the money that was raised at Park Street Church, we want to be able to go further and go deeper in the communities we serve. And we know right now that the displacement crisis in the United States is at historical numbers. I mean, we've reached over 110 million displaced people in the world. And it is a crisis. And so the question really is, how can we individually as the body of Christ, and how can the church step up and be a main player in doing what God wants us to do? How do we love our neighbors? How do we be generous and really care for the most vulnerable in these pretty tough times?
So where can folks get this Lent? Because so many times we create our own Lent devotionals, and
Right.
that may be appropriate in places. I don't want to criticize that, but you can save yourself a lot of work by using someone else's. And so where could I get the Lent devotional from World Relief?
Yes. So let me tell you right now. So you can reach out to me at any time at P MacDonald, PMacDonald at wr.org, reach out to me. If you're a pastor, if you're a church leader, if you're an individual, reach out to me. I can send you very easily the links to get involved in. And right now we're pre-ordering the hard copies of the devotional. So I am happy to share with you, and you could also probably share it on your website, Charles. And also, as of the 15th, we will have a website, a specific website where you can go on. It's a complete toolkit, and you can figure out how, what resources you can use. And Calla Parker, who is really leading the initiative for World Relief, her email is CA Parker, PARKER @WR.org. She is like the go-to for this whole initiative as we begin our 80th year. And so, many churches that the people who are listening to this probably have already stepped into this space. And of course, Park Street Church is a little bit in the center. They're partnering very closely with us, and they have already ordered several hundred devotionals, and they are, focusing their whole Lenten season on the issue of how the church can be the church and stepping into the most vulnerable globally around the world.
That's great. And so, do you know the URL for the site you were talking about, or is that not out yet?
I'm not sure if that's out, but you can always go to www.wr.org.
And you'll get that to us, and we'll get it on our website too, so folks can find it.
Yeah. And as of Monday, January 15th, that this is all going to be launched, and it's really exciting. And that's the beginning. And so we really hope, we hope that you who are listening and the pastors who are listening say, I want to step forward. I mean, it's a little bit that much more special for us here in New England because it is Boston Strong. I mean, it started here. Don't you want to be a part? Think of the tens of thousands of millions of people who have been served since 1944, when a few members at Park Street Church said, we need to step in. Yeah. We need, by the Spirit, we need to create a movement to help what is going on halfway across the world. And think of all that have been served through Jesus Christ, because the motivation, again, those who work with World Relief, our faith and our motivation of doing this work is because of what God did, Jesus Christ did for us. He loved us first so we can love others. And so I'm really encouraging everyone who's listening, like, you can make a difference, and the church really can be the church. And I know recently you did an interview with my father-in-law, Gordon MacDonald, and Dad was saying, we really need a leader at this time. And I believe in that, but I believe that God has equipped all of us to serve and to minister. We don't have to be the pastor. We can see how the Spirit leads us in, serving and giving and just, obeying God's command to care for the most vulnerable, and those are the least of these.
Yeah. And of course, prayer, I know you would say, is instrumental to this too. And you're reminding me of a story your father-in-law has told a couple of times, and I think on the Church in Action even, about how his grandmother would go through the paper during World War II with him. They would read the paper together, and they would pray together for the children of Germany. And now, of course, your father-in-law goes over to Germany every year, and he speaks, and he asks people who was alive during World War II, and hands go up, and he said, I used to pray for you every day. And people cry.
Oh, I know, people cry. And, the president of World Relief, who's a new president, CEO, his name is Mile Green. And he stepped in about, it was 2 years last August. And he just shared yesterday with our whole staff around the world and our staff in the US, just how prayer is the key, is that, that's what we do first. God, how can you lead us into relationship and opportunities so that the church can really be the church and serve those who you lead us to? Yeah. And so you couldn't have asked me a better question about prayer, because it is in the center of everything that we do. And
Yeah.
actually, I'm happy to, there was a kind of an email that Miles sent out, and I'm happy to copy and paste it and send it to you,
Okay.
Charles, to just show you just how integral
Yeah.
that prayer is to kind of seeking how we care for those.
Yeah. I always think about Luke 16:9, where you've got the parable of the shrewd servant, right? Who cuts everybody's, mark it down from 800 to 400 and mark it down from 100 to 50 or whatever it is. And, Jesus ends that with saying, use your worldly wealth
Mm,
to make friends for yourself here on earth so that they will greet you in heavenly places. Right. And so you don't know who's going to greet you based on giving. It's somebody in Malawi, somebody in Ukraine, somebody that they're going to be there and they're going to greet you and they're going to be grateful for you because the role you played in them being there.
I
And I
know.
think the same, he's talking about worldly wealth, but the same thing about prayer. I'd love, when I meet somebody from Malawi, it would be nice if I said, I used to pray for you.
I know. I
Right.
know. I think that happened recently with the Grace Chapel team that came
Yeah.
over. They had gone back and forth so much to this northern part of Malawi called Zimba, because we really encourage church partnerships. And if you're interested in having a real connection, a real church partnership with World Relief, please, don't feel shy to reach out to me, because or to churches like Walnut Hill or Black Rock Church or Grace Chapel or Park Street, because these really meaningful church relationships, church partnerships, really are very relational and very reciprocal. And to see just these members of Grace Chapel who reconnected with people that they've been praying for and caring for over the last 12 to 20 years. It's really beautiful.
And there's obviously some big churches put big resources into this, but really I think the backbone of World Relief is smaller churches.
Absolutely.
Because, and to me, the beauty of it is, when something happens, I don't have, I call you, I don't know anybody in Ukraine. I don't know anybody in Israel that could do anything. And so as soon as these things happen, my first touch point is call Patty MacDonald. Patty, what are you guys doing? And now we can all get the power of my small gift with your small gift with someone else's small gift suddenly is a big number that we
That's
can
right.
actually have an impact for, that on our own, none of us could. So Patty, thanks so much for being with us today. Thanks for your ministry, your partnership, your friendship, and all the other things you do to support the church across New England. We're really grateful to you. The maybe one more thing to talk about before we go is we are in a phase at Vision New England where we've been focused a lot on the Sermon on the Mount. The job of a disciple is to memorize, at least in Jesus's time, it was to memorize the teachings of the teacher and model everything in your life on the teacher. So it struck me last year that spending some time in the Sermon on the Mount, the primary place Jesus is teaching, would be well worth it. So I would challenge people as they're looking at what they might do to reinvigorate their spiritual life or try something new. Take a month and just read the Sermon on the Mount every day. And just start and find some time to just sit and think about it. What I did is I spent last January reading it every day. Then the next day it was like, how does this section relate to that section? Why does he talk about it here? Are they really separate and distinct chunks, or is there a flow? And in retrospect, I think there's a really strong flow to what Jesus is doing there. And then working our way to journaling on it and really being contemplative about the Sermon on the Mount so it works into us. Jesus talks about in the Sermon on the Mount, it's the spiritual disciplines. In Matthew 6:1, after he gets done saying, you should be perfect like your Father is perfect, he spends time talking about, the spiritual disciplines. The point is, it's those spiritual disciplines that transform us to be like Jesus. So I give you that and challenge you to do it. And if you do it, I would love to hear your experience with it, because it's had such an impact on my life. And we're sharing that with people to see if similar things happen for them. And then we'd love to share that with more people to see just how God transforms us when we focus on what Jesus is telling us he is here for and what we are to be. So thanks so much for listening. I want to thank our producer, Jess Mangano, and I want to thank you for listening to us and engaging with us. We're really grateful. This program is created by Vision New England, which accelerates evangelism by helping the church make disciples, do justice, and foster unity so people want to know Jesus and New England's transformed. You can find more resources and donate at visionnewengland.org. This program is brought to you by our friends at the Palau Association, who are dedicated to proclaiming the good news, uniting the church, and impacting cities worldwide. Join us next Sunday at 2 p.m. on Life Changing Radio. God bless you, and thanks for listening.